Hello, good morning. How we all doing? Who we got here? Good morning, Yusuf. Good to see you. Hello, Raiden. Lovely to see you too. Oh yeah. Um. Bonjour, Imogen. Raiden, I'm not 40 seconds late. I am like a wizard. I arrive precisely when I intend to. Hello, Nicola. Good to see you too. Hey, Susie. Welcome to my, I don't know, my Baghdadi palace, something like that. Hey, Izzy. Hello, Danielle. Hey, Oliver. Hey, Chloe. A Lord of the Rings reference, Raiden, just for you. Am I in Aladdin's live action set? Something like that. It's a bit OTT, isn't it? It's nice though. Hey, Brea. Good morning, Chloe and Gilly. You can't hear me. Oh no. Can anyone hear me? I assume somebody can hear me. Let me send a message to. You can. Thank you. Okay. There you go. You can hear me. Thank you. Oh, on the computer, Hazel. Oh, nice. Oh, Kevin Gilly, sorry. Very good. So yeah, today we've got pancakes today. Nice. Yeah, pancakes are good. Yeah, today we are going on another philosophical adventure. We're going to be looking at, have I read The Secret History of the World? Have I read The Secret History of the World? You mean that one? Is it that one? It's an interesting one. Yeah, I've read that. Strangely, that's right here next to me. Yeah, it's barmy in many ways, but it's very interesting, isn't it? It lets you sort of you think about all kinds of weird things. Yeah, I'm not sure if we really are all related to plants, but it's nice. Yeah. Yeah, sure do. Yeah. Go out and come in again. Oh, there's no point in me saying that to you because you can't hear me. Yeah, it links everything together, doesn't it, Bray? It's a lovely sort of. I mean, like I say, I don't take it particularly seriously, but it's brilliant place for sort of jumping off and researching different things. You read a little bit and you get interested, and then you go and research it some more, and yeah, it's a wonderful sort of starting place for all that esoterica, which is super fun. Maybe Raiden, yes, maybe. We might be related to Koroks. Yes, Isla, why not? Are there moons? Yeah, I think it's a moon and two stars, I think, rather than multiple moons. Just the one moon, but other lights. Yeah. All right. So why am I in Baghdad today? Well, because today we're going to be looking at Imam al-Ghazali, who is probably one of the most influential Islamic philosophers. Now, it comes to my attention that after 2 years-ish of doing these philosophers, we've never come across a Muslim philosopher yet. So we're going to try and remedy that at least a bit today. There are many others that we could look at, but we're going to start with the big one, Al-Ghazali. And this is going to give us, hopefully, a bit of a different perspective from other philosophers, but not entirely. We'll see as we go through that there are definite connections with Western, Christian or pre-Christian philosophers too. Oh, Susie, nearly coming up to your birthday. Congratulations. Awesome. So we're looking here at, he does have a swag beard. Yeah. We're looking here at a philosopher from the Islamic world, normally from Baghdad. We'll look at that in a second. Born somewhere around the year 1058 and died in 1111 on the 19th of December, I believe. But he's a medievalist. Yeah, he comes from maybe the golden age of Islamic civilization and thought. We're looking there at a time when the Islamic world is very well established. It's been around Islamic civilization for about 400 years, almost 400 years, by the point that he's born. And he's living in in and around and visiting some of the most amazing sort of cultural centers on earth at that time. And he's doing things in a way that, some of you may be Muslim and you may sort of know the basics of Islam. Some of you may not. So I don't know. Ask questions. If you're not sure about any sort of Islamic stuff that I throw out there as just sort of basic fact, please do ask, and maybe we can go into that. But the equivalent is, I don't know if it is prayer. You've heard about this guy, Isla. That's good. So I'm just rambling now. We're going to look at the man who knew everything today. We're going to have a look at his ideas about rationalism. We're going to go on and steal my books. That'll be explained at the time. We're going to look at his sort of maybe core philosophy. I don't know if that's right, because this dude wrote over 70 works, depending on how you count them. Many of them, various, multi-volumed. So we're going to have a look at his theory of occasionalism. We're going to have a look at his opinion on the ego, which is something which we've talked about way back when we looked at our sort of psychological philosophers, Freud and what's his face, he whose name I've forgotten, Jung. Sorry, that's it. And so we're going to look at where ego fits in there. We're going to have a look at him sweeping for years. We're going to look at some criticism of him, and we're going to wrap up with his concept of presentness. Yeah. Hello, Adam. You're a Muslim. Awesome. There you go. So some of you may have heard of Al-Ghazali in other ways, and yeah, hopefully we've got a whole load to look at. All right, let's start with the man. Oh, that was an anticlimax, wasn't it? Instead of starting, I just moved the words. Let's start with the man here who knew everything. So Al-Ghazali, he's not born a famous person. He's not born a very important person. We are told, and this is hazy history because we're essentially talking about a peasant here, but we're told that Al-Ghazali's father died utterly penniless, and relatively young, leaving Al-Ghazali and his brother and sister with almost nothing. Yeah. I mean, they grew up as pretty much as poor can be. It's a very nice round ball, isn't it? I do, Youssef. Yeah. I remember the penguin juicing. So, yeah, it's not a great start in life, or it wouldn't be. But although his father died penniless, we are told that his father handed I'm going to say the reins of his children. He handed his children over in his will to a Sufi master. Now, the Sufis are a strand of Muslims. At this point in history, in this area, we're talking in and around Baghdad, so what is now Iraq. Most people are Sunni Muslims. There are Shia Muslims as well, sort of dotted around, but they're in a bit of a minority, and the two groups don't get on particularly well over there in the sort of Middle East. But you've also got this third type, the Sufi, and Sufis are mystical. They believe in secrets. Oh, secrets, mystical secrets about God, Allah, about angels and reality and consciousness and all this kind of stuff. And it's this guy that these kids end up with. Yeah. Now, their penniless father wasn't entirely penniless. I mean, he was himself, but he did save some money to send to him with his children. So even though he didn't use it for himself, he used it for his kids. So they did have a little bit of a push very early on in their life. And well, under this Sufi master, this very wise man, Al-Ghazali becomes super intelligent. Yeah, maybe part of it is just natural intelligence. Part of it is the fact that he's found this amazing teacher. He would say, of course, that most of it was down to Allah and the grace of Allah. But there he is, living with this wise man, getting more and more clever as he gets older and older. He ends up studying under many great teachers, one of which gives us this wonderful quote here. He said that Al-Ghazali was an ocean so deep you could drown in him. Now that's sort of, you can read that positively or you can read that negatively, can't you? He's so deep, man. He's just so, he's so wise. He knows so many things. Oh, deep. I mean, that's like quite positive to say about someone. But then you've got that, you could drown in him. He's somehow dangerous. He's so deeply intelligent and wise that, he could end you. Um, Now, we know that he's quite impressive. Yeah, no, he does sound like a good dad, doesn't he? Some people think that the story of his dad is just a complete, fiction, kind of. No one really knows when he was born or where he came from, and he just sort of pops out of the ground someday. But that's the sort of myth behind his life, I suppose, that he himself said. So that's fair dues. He ends up teaching in Baghdad in one of the most influential, impressive schools in Islam, in the entire Islamic world. And Baghdad at this time would have looked roughly like this. I mean, it's hard to actually find a map of Baghdad from back in the medieval period because, well, it was destroyed pretty finally or totally by the Mongols a couple of hundred years after Al-Ghazali's time. But back then it would have looked a bit like this. The original city was completely round. It was seen as a wonder of architecture, the most impressive place in the world, this completely round city, completely round walls. But by Al-Ghazali's time, it would have expanded out. So you've got the circular city, but of course, as more and more people joined and came and wanted to live there, it spread out around the circle. It spread over the river Tigris, and you end up with something that would have looked like this. Yeah. Maybe either. Maybe it's like the whole Jedi thing. Yeah, maybe his dad is looking over him as he lives. Yes. You can hear now. Yeah, we're talking about Al-Ghazali today. Who is an Islamic philosopher, possibly the most famous philosopher in all Islam. No, Raiden, no, I don't know why it's called Baghdad. I'm not sure what Baghdad, the etymology of that is, but it's got nothing to do with bags or dads. Yeah, as far as I'm aware. Titans roam around the outside of the walls. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? As far as I know, no Titans. It's just wolves. And unfortunately, those wolves did not stop the Mongol conquerors, who, we're told, in the 1300s, destroyed Baghdad so utterly that the river Tigris ran black with all the ink from all the books that were shoved into the river. This great place of learning, possibly one of the most brilliant places of knowledge on earth, was completely and utterly destroyed. Yeah, not a good time. Who were the Mongols? The Mongols were people from Central Asia who conquered most of the Middle East, all the way into Europe, conquered northern China. They were incredibly powerful people and incredibly scary. Some people say that the Mongols were the atomic bomb of the medieval period. They basically came along and destroyed everything and built new stuff as well. They say Genghis Khan actually changed the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. He killed so many people that he sort of did the reverse of global warming. But anywho, Al-Ghazali knows nothing about this because that's going to happen a couple of hundred years after his time. So here he is, teaching in one of the best universities in the world. He's a very public man. Everyone knows him. He's famous. He is given all kinds of titles like Master of Religion and things like that because he's just so incredibly wise. No, let's not do that, Brian. Oliver, yes, yeah, the river would have been full of dead people too, but they say the river ran black with ink because it was all the books that were shoved in the river. That's what, and who knows what kind of knowledge we lost as a human race during that time. We would have lost a lot. Now, Isla suggests the power might go to his head. What you think being, the most intelligent man in the world. And scholars are pretty sure that he did literally know everything. And when I say he knew everything there was to know. He knew all the sciences, he knew all his maths. If there was knowledge available in, by let's say the year 1100 roughly, he knew it all, every bit of it. And there's a few people that get that title in history. The last person in Britain would have been John Locke, the philosopher, who we haven't done yet. We haven't done Locke, have we? But John Locke was said to be a man who knew everything. He had read everything. He understood everything there was to understand. Now, that doesn't mean, you could put Al-Ghazali or John Locke today and they would still know everything. There's just too much to know today. The internet is huge, and the amount of different sciences and mathematical things and cultural stuff that we know about is just too massive for any one person to know it. But we think that around the year 1100, Al-Ghazali had everything. He knew it all. Yeah. Everything there was to know. Wouldn't the river have turned to paper mache? Maybe back to the inky river. Now this is a good point. Imogen says that being a philosopher, or I mean, he's not just a philosopher, he's a scientist, he's a mathematician, he's all this kind of stuff. But yeah, being someone who knows everything is much easier when no one knows anything yet. You're quite right. And that's a good point, Bray. Yes, maybe today we have to sift through a lot of stuff which isn't quite so intelligent before we can find the stuff that is. That's a good point. Yeah. Did he know what color your socks are? No, he didn't, because he didn't know. He knew everything that there was to know in the field of learning. Yeah. So he knew everything about science, maths, culture, religion. He knew everything about that, but there wasn't so much to know. Back in the medieval times, you could know everything. At least, very nearly everything. Most people didn't. Most people knew very much nothing. Yes, he knew about philosophy, that's for sure. Yeah. He may have had a guess at what color your socks are in the future, perhaps. So there he is, the ocean so deep you could drown in him. And he didn't really like rationality. I mean, in some senses he did, because, some things are rational, but he didn't like the way that the scientists around him in particular sort of put everything down to science. We learn how the planets move and that explains this. And then we learn how the plants grow and this explains biology. And then we look at these chemicals that we can mix and boom, we've got chemistry, and everything makes sense. Everything is based on science, on rules, on rational thought. Ghazali wasn't so down with that for one, initial reason. And no one knows where socks go after you wash them, why they disappear, not even Al-Ghazali. So yeah, he's, that's what everyone around him's like. And the reason that I can the main reason I think why he didn't like rationality, we'll get to the more philosophical reason in a minute, but he found it too easy. He said that there was, he would go around and he would talk to the most intelligent people. Yeah. Let's go and talk to I don't know, we'll go to the other side of Baghdad and we'll talk to the head of chemical research, the head of alchemy. And then we'll go and talk to this guy over here who's an astronomer. And then we'll talk to this guy over here who spent his life looking at plants, and these mathematicians. And Al-Ghazali could destroy any one of their arguments just by using rationality. He could argue. They say that Al-Ghazali never, ever once lost an argument. No matter what you argued with him, he could beat you using the power of logic. Yeah, it was easy for him. There was only one group of people that he could not defeat, and they were the scholars who were more like the Sufis, the mystics. The people who would just sit there and go, God says it. Oh, it is so because of God. And you can't really rationally attack that. You can't break that argument apart. But everything else he could, he could, I don't know if he ever did, but he's the kind of guy who would argue that the sky is definitely not blue. And he would convince you by the end of it, just by using rational step-by-step arguments. And so for him, that sort of rationality started to get less important. If you can always argue your way out of anything, like the old, performers of rhetoric in Greek, people in Greek philosophy, they got to a point where instead of actually trying to think about philosophy, they just learnt how to argue better. and then they could argue their way out of things, everything from a court case to a philosophical debate. If you knew how to argue, then you're all right. And Al-Ghazali knows how to argue. Yeah. Well, there you are, Isla. The sky's not blue. It's every color. Yeah, why not? I mean, he would, he could deconstruct any idea you gave to him because like many of you are in the chat, technically it's not blue. And it's very much what politicians do today, isn't it? You can take any standpoint, and you can, if you can argue well enough, you can justify anything, you can disprove anything, or prove anything that you want. And so for Al-Ghazali, this starts to, everything kind of loses its point. If you can argue against everything, then, does anything really have any value? Do any of these arguments really matter? And so sort of the most obvious sort of showdown that we see, and we should probably do one about Ibn Rashid at some point, but was a debate between Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rashid. Ibn Rashid was very scientific. He argued that everything in the world could be worked out. They hadn't got it yet. It's still medieval times. We haven't worked out yet, guys, but we will do if we can if we continue to use scientific method, and we continue to test and retest, and we continue to work things out logically with mathematics as a framework, we can find the answer to anything. And Al-Ghazali argued the opposite. No, we can't. That's not what's going to happen, because rational things are too easy to disprove. Were there socks in those days? Oliver, you seem to be on very much attached to the sock idea today. As far as I don't know, were they wearing socks in Baghdad in the 11th century? I don't know. I really don't. You'll have to find some kind of historian of fashion, or maybe just a sock historian if they exist. Maybe. All right. So, no rationality. Now, we get this account from Al-Ghazali about a time when he's traveling around. He's got, his most precious things that he owns are books. I mean, he's that kind of guy. Nothing to him is more important than a book, because books have knowledge, and knowledge, is powerful. It makes you impressive. It's just really, really good. Let's put it that way. Knowledge is good to Al-Ghazali. And so one day he's traveling through a slightly dodgy area. You know how it is. And he's got his books and his other valuables and things. They're all on the back of a mule, a donkey type thing. And he's just on his way traveling from A to B. When out jump a group of bandits. Now, they probably didn't look as cool as these ones in the picture, to be fair, but this is a cool picture, so we're going with it anyway. But a group of bandits jump out, and they sort of surround him and his mule, and they sort of shout, the Arabic equivalent of your money or your life. And Al-Ghazali says, sure, take everything. Well, take it, don't hurt me. I really don't want to die right now. But please, don't take the books, yeah? Be gents. You can take the money, you can take the, I don't know, what other valuables. You can take my lunchbox. Yeah, you can have that. But you cannot have my books. Yeah, you can take the mule. Why not? Thank you. Brea has done a bit of research here. Apparently the Greeks had sandal socks in 800 BC. That's good to know. There you are. Well, Raiden, there you go. Now, the bandit, the chief of the bandits. Hey, Robert, good to see you. He comes up to Al-Ghazali and he laughs in his face, in his best bandit laugh. And Al-Ghazali says, what are you doing? Why are you laughing at me? What are we learning about, Robert? We're doing Al-Ghazali today. There you go, Al-Ghazali. But they do look a little bit like the Ninja Turtles, except for the turtle bit, of course. So the bandit's laughing at him. And Al-Ghazali says, well, why are you laughing? I want my books. I need the books. I need the knowledge. And the bandit says, well, knowledge doesn't live in books. If you're so wise, then why do you need it written down? And he steals the books anyway. off go the bandits, leaving Al-Ghazali with not much. I mean, for the sake of argument, we'll suggest that he even stole his socks, since that seems to be what people are really interested in today. He was roasted by bandits. But Al-Ghazali did not see this as a bad thing. Yeah, he realized that actually the bandit lord was quite right. You know, what's the point in having knowledge if it's stuck in a book? That's not actual real knowledge. That doesn't mean you know it. Just because I have a book, yeah, it doesn't mean that I know everything in the book, unless, of course, I've read it and remember it. That's knowledge. Having it written down, that's not knowledge. So Al-Ghazali came to the conclusion that the bandit was sent by God. Allah sent the bandit to teach him this important lesson. And from that time on, Al-Ghazali vowed that everything he wanted to know, he would remember. So, you know, there's a long tradition in Islam of the Hafiz, person who reads Quran and completely gets it stuck in their memory. Yeah, they can recite Quran by heart. And this is, you know, this had been going on for a few hundred years by the time Al-Ghazali is around. People have been doing this. And Al-Ghazali started to apply that to everything else. You know, he would read a book, he would read it twice, he would memorize it, and then he would, you know, didn't matter if you stole this book then, does it? Because the knowledge isn't in the book anymore. Well, it is, but it's in his head, and he doesn't need the book. Yeah. Yeah, now that means that he must have had a prodigious memory to be able to remember everything that he'd read. You know, maybe not everything, but everything he needed to remember. He, you know, could recite these works by other scholars, historians, theologians. He could just tell you what they've written word for word. Kind of freaky. Yeah. So, his major philosophy then sort of ties in with this story of the bandit. He wanted to, he was concerned with a lot of things, but one of the things that he was most concerned with is, what about cause and effect? What causes things to happen? You know, why does a bandit jump out, steal my books, you know, laugh at me and teach me a valuable lesson? You know, why would that happen? Why, when I fall over, do I, you know, knock my knee, and why does it hurt? Why, when I pick up a stone and let it fall, does it drop to the ground? I mean, what is the cause behind everything? That's what he wants to know. Could he remember about? Well, oh no. Yeah, this is a cool symbol. I suppose it's a symbol. This just says Allah. So his answer to this is not entirely rational, as you'd expect, because he is against just pure cold logic. And instead, he comes up with this theory, which is probably, you know, a theory that others had already, but it's occasionalism. The basic idea is that everything happens, you know, literally everything that does happen, happens because Allah wills it. Yeah, God makes things happen. And that's not just like the big stuff. That's not like, oh, the bandit came out and taught me a lesson. What an interesting little push by the hand of God there. But, you know, the rest of reality is just sort of ticking along nicely. No, to Al-Ghazali, Allah does everything. Why does the feather, you know, float to the ground? Because Allah says it should. You know, he consciously makes it do so. Why, when I am hungry, does my tummy start to rumble? Well, it's because Allah made it so. Why does the bandit teach me? Because Allah made it so. Why do I have this beard? Because Allah made it so. Why did that sausage over there, I don't know, taste like figs? Because Allah made it so. Now, this means, because Allah makes everything so, consciously, not just sort of passively, Imogen says this is a lazy philosophy. Maybe, but it's, you know, incredibly powerful, because what it opens up, of course, this philosophy, is that just like David Hume, who we did about a year ago, it seems like a year ago anyway, David Hume, the British philosopher, he said that, you know, just because something happens over and over again, it doesn't mean that it's actually a certainty. Yeah, you can maybe the sun comes up every day. Maybe it comes up every day for 10 billion years. That doesn't mean it's going to come up tomorrow, not necessarily. Yeah. And this is what we've got here with occasionalism. It means that Allah, since he does everything consciously, it fits with basic Islamic teaching, of course, that Allah is almighty and Allah is all-knowing and all-powerful. There's no doubt that he could be completely controlling everything, sort of micromanaging, if you like, from above. But it means that he can make miracles happen whenever. Maybe one day you drop the stone and it doesn't fall to the ground. Instead, it floats up into the air. Maybe one day you fall over and you smack your head against a rock and it doesn't hurt. Yeah, because Allah makes it so. Maybe one day that bandit who's come to potentially kill you and steal all your stuff actually teaches you a valuable life lesson because Allah made it so. Now that I suppose, yeah, Raiden, that's a good question. If this is Allah, then why do bad things happen? And that would be down to the will of Allah. Yeah. But the point is that we don't get to choose. And there is no underpinning scientific, I don't know, sort of solid rational basis to anything. Yeah. It's all down to what Allah chooses to happen. Now, maybe we could influence that, says Al-Ghazali, maybe but through prayer and through devotion and through submission to Allah, which is what Islam means, submission. Then maybe, more positive things happen to us, but maybe not. And ultimately, it's Allah that decides. How do you spell Allah? The English way. Well, that's how you spell Allah in Arabic, but in English, Allah, like that. Why did you eat the cake? Because Allah made it so. Well, you can't really use it as an excuse, you see. That's the thing. Now, Al-Ghazali is not saying that, everyone's just a puppet at this point, yeah? But he's saying that there are certain patterns in the universe, but Allah can change them at any time, yeah? Do other religions believe this? Well, yeah, I mean, Christianity would say that God is all-powerful and all-loving and, can, do whatever he wants, The Christian God is exactly the same, makes miracles happen whenever he fancies it, or she or it, the God. So, yeah, this is certainly not just an Islamic thing. In fact, there are many other occasionalist philosophers, and most of them are Christian, yeah? But Al-Ghazali, he's coming at it from an Islamic point of view. That's a good point, Clement. Maybe some of the things Allah chooses to do are quite straightforward. Something bad's going to happen to you because you're a bad person, or you've done a bad thing. Something good is going to happen to you because you deserve rewarding for a good thing. Maybe, but it goes beyond that. Yeah, it's who knows? If you were infinitely wise, if you knew literally, Al-Ghazali is said to have known everything that there was to know in medieval Baghdad. That's not the same level of intelligence of Allah. Yeah, Allah literally knows everything. Everything that will happen, has happened, is happening. Allah knows exactly where the socks go. He could pinpoint them all right now, because he's not a human. Yeah, Allah is way above that. So the trying to put limits on his power or trying to understand what he's doing. Why do good people suffer? Well, Allah has a reason. We just don't know what that reason is. Yeah, because we are human and he's not. It kind of makes sense, I suppose. So you've got to try and imagine it as just this super intelligence above all other things. Now, of course, if you're not religious, this doesn't really help us. Yeah, if you're not a Muslim or a Christian, when we're looking at occasionalism from a Christian point of view, it's not really a suitable answer to why did something happen. Why does the sun rise? Well, because Allah makes it rise. It's not like, if you don't believe in Allah in the first place, then that's no good as a philosophical argument. But as part of the Islamic canon and as part of the Islamic world, it makes total sense. Yeah, Allah is powerful enough to do this, to control everything. So why doesn't he? Yeah. Why did Allah make a big war? Well, because maybe there's a reason. We just don't know it. That would sort of be Al-Ghazali's answer. But it's not as simple as this. Al-Ghazali, he doesn't just say, well, Allah's decided everything, therefore I can go around doing whatever I want because Allah is going to make sure that everything's fine for me or not. And, there's no point in bothering. That's not what Muslims believe. Muslims believe that we have a duty to purify ourselves as humans and to submit to the will of Allah, but also we have the responsibility to live well within a community, within an economic system, without violence, as part of the ummah, looking after one another, both financially and with practical help, and that by doing that, we purify ourselves, and sort of the reward, if you like, that you get when you pray 5 times a day, when you do your rak'ahs and you pray to Allah, is that you get connected to him. You get a personal relationship. Ummah, Yusuf. Yeah, I was taught about Islam from a whole range of different Muslims from different countries. So yeah, my pronunciation is probably a right old mishmash of different ways of pronouncing Arabic words from different places all over the world. Yeah. So does Allah start wars to teach humans about peace? Well, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Maybe it's like the bandit on a larger scale. The bandit comes out and teaches you a lesson, through suffering. Maybe war is supposed to do that too. But again, it's like almost pointless me trying to guess. Yeah, because I'm not Allah, and only Allah, says Al-Ghazali, controls everything. So this opens up whole loads of different avenues of philosophical thought. And once Al-Ghazali has come to this sort of decision of occasionalism, that sort of then leaves him open to care more about ethics than sciences. Yeah, in some sense, the sciences to Al-Ghazali are just easy. Done that. Yeah, we'll move on. We'll do something else now. Instead, we'll think about what we should do, not how things work or why things, or the form that things take, but why they happen and how we can make that better. Now, that doesn't mean as well. Yeah, I know that's good. Ida says, but if he didn't want us to think about it, then yeah, but he does. Well, I don't know. I don't know the mind of Allah, but Al-Ghazali says that Allah does want you to think about things and do science and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we must accept the fact that the ultimate buck stops with him. He is the one who is going to make the grand decisions and the small decisions. And we're going to try and communicate with him as we can to understand him as much as humanly possible, which is very limited. But through that, we're going to get a deeper understanding of life, the universe, and everything. And that's worth doing. So let's have a look here. So what Al-Ghazali sort of comes to a decision about is the ego. Now, he wouldn't have used the word ego. Ego is a relatively new word. But there he is. He's in Baghdad. He's possibly the most famous scholar in the city, and that means, in the Islamic world. Do Muslims have a Garden of Eden story? Yeah, Brea, yeah. So in Islam, the Garden of Eden story is very similar to in Christianity and Judaism, with one very key difference. After the fall, as it's called in Christianity and Judaism, when Adam and Eve, they eat the fruit and they're kicked out the Garden of Eden. That happens in Islam. But later, unlike in Christianity, Allah comes along and forgives them because Allah is all merciful. So in Islam, every human being that is born inherently good because there is no original sin, because Allah has forgiven Adam and Eve. Whereas in Christianity, it's the opposite. In Christianity, everyone is born bad because of the crime that Adam and Eve did, and therefore you need to be baptized into the Christian church to have that sin washed away. So it's like, but the start of the story, if you like, is very, very similar, but it changes as it goes. Yeah. Not all forms. No, in some forms, baptism happens much later. So, but if we're talking, if we're going to medieval Christianity and Islam, there's a big difference there in the Adam and Eve story. Allah is all merciful, whereas the Christian God is all merciful as long as you, are baptized. There you go. Kind of almost all merciful, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's it, Yusuf. Yeah, thank you. So the ego is a real problem, Al-Ghazali learns. He's a celebrity. And at some point, after years of teaching in the university, about 9 years before his death, he comes to a realization. He goes to teach one of his lectures at the great big school in front of a whole crowd of people one day, and he stands there and he can't say anything. His mouth stops working. His tongue will not move. It's just, he can't do a thing. He just stands there sweating. And he realizes that Allah, well, this is his realization. I mean, you may have a different opinion, but he realizes that Allah has silenced him for a reason. Yeah. Allah has made it so that his tongue will no longer work. And, this is something that he's been building up to for a while in his thoughts. But what he comes up with is that actually, why is he so wise? Why does he go around learning everything? Why does he go around teaching people? Why does he read everything and commit it to memory? Why does he spend all this time arguing with other philosophers and scientists? I mean, why does he do it? Is it because of the value of knowledge? Or is it really deep down inside? Is it really because he just likes to show off? He wants other people to go, oh, wow, Al-Ghazali's great. Oh, wow, he's the man. He's the cleverest dude in the world. Let's give him titles and let's bow down to him. Has he been doing all this, for his life up to this point? Has he been doing it only because he wants other people to be impressed? And if that's true, obviously he's doing this for the wrong reasons, because that's not in line with Islam, being bold and brash and just sort of showing off as, the value of life is not in that. The value of life is other places. So he does the only thing he can really do, that he thinks he can do, and he leaves. He gives away all of his money. And he had quite a lot. He just gives it all away. He gives away all of his possessions, all of his books. He gives away his house, and he literally just walks away from his entire life. Done. Not doing it. I'm doing this for the wrong reason. I've taken the wrong path. I should be so much more than this. That's what he's thinking. So he leaves the ego behind with all his possessions, and he just leaves. Yeah. Now, maybe that is interesting in the chat. Let me just catch up with the chat here. He could have just had some anxiety. People, historians, they're always looking for what was the physical condition that he had. And in some ways it's interesting. In some ways it doesn't matter, because it's what he thought it was that's important, I suppose. It's kind of the worst thing that can happen to a philosopher, isn't it? Not being able to speak. Yeah. Raiden, when it comes to belief in things, Al-Ghazali is a very devout Muslim. Yeah. So that doesn't mean that he has hatred for other religions or other schools of thought, but he himself is quite secure in his Islamic faith. It will change throughout his life. As we'll see when he wanders off, his ideas are going to start to change. But he never stops being Muslim. Yeah. Very bold or very strange. I mean, different people look at this in different ways. Yeah. Would he know about Christianity? Oh, for sure, because Christianity is quite a lot older than Islam, and Quran is based off of ideas and stories and things from both the Torah and the Bible. So yes, he would have known very much about Christianity, everything there was to know, in fact, because he knew everything. So yeah, he would have been very aware of different religions. He wouldn't have only understood Islam. Yeah. Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, the Jewish scripture. Torah is the Old Testament. Yeah. The first 5 books of the Bible, called the Pentateuch. But yeah, so that's like the core of Judaism. That's the story of Adam and Eve and Noah and all that kind of stuff. So he would have been very familiar with all that. But he is a Muslim, so Quran would have been at the forefront of his mind. Quran and Hadith, the stories of the Prophet. So off he goes. He just disappears. He spends the rest of his life, which is about 9 years, I think, traveling around and not doing anything. Never again will he make public speeches. Never again will he go to the big schools, although they keep inviting him to give speeches. He just won't. He'll give small speeches. He'll teach individual students. He will. He spends 2 years just sweeping the mosque. He just goes to a mosque and he just, completely penniless, and he just sweeps every day. He doesn't really talk to anyone. He doesn't really do anything. He just sweeps the floor of the mosque. He does his daily prayers. He does his wudu. He prays. He keeps himself pure and clean. But, he's trying to get away from his own ego. He's trying to step away and instead remember what's important. And to him, what's important is Allah. If Allah created everything, if Allah controls everything, then surely that's the important thing that he needs to think about, instead of his own ego. And, how many people did I have come to my lecture this week? Was it 78? But last week I had 102. I must try better. I must do harder. I must, come up with new jokes or facts, or, he tries to get all that out of his head. He doesn't want to impress anyone anymore. He's just this little dude. Most people don't even know his name because he doesn't make that very clear. And he just sweeps the floor of the mosque every day for free. And that's his life for 2 years. And during that time, he becomes more of a Sufi, I suppose. He starts thinking more about the mystical side of Islam rather than the sort of mainstream Sunni and scientific side that's very popular in Baghdad and around the area at this time. He starts to focus more. Some people call him a dervish, which is someone, a Sufi mystic, who basically gives up their life, lives a life of poverty and hardness in order to better understand God, Allah. And you see that most obviously in the whirling dervishes of the Ottomans. But this is long before the Ottomans. And he was quite just chilling, I suppose. Yes, my background does. I don't know if my background is in Baghdad. It could be. I don't know. It's a bit fantastical, isn't it? And I don't know. I think this is Baghdad today, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure where this photo is. I'm just looking for a picture of someone sweeping a mosque. No, that's not Al-Ghazali because he wasn't alive in the time of photos. But it shows the basic point, I suppose. Oh, a dervish, Dervish. Yeah, dervish. Or dervish, I think it's supposed to be pronounced, but I'm English and I have terrible pronunciation. There you go. Quite right, Chloe. I agree. No, Isla, the monkey is out of it. So sweeping away, sweep, sweep, sweep. Now, there's a lot of criticism of Al-Ghazali. In fact, there's been quite a lot of criticism in the chat today. It's interesting. A lot of things that people say, is it a coincidence that he comes at the end of the golden age of Islam? Or is he, in fact, the cause of the end of the golden age of Islam? Now, different historians, different scholars, different Muslims, they will have very different opinions of Al-Ghazali. For some, he goes down in history as the second most important Muslim after Muhammad the Prophet, may peace be upon him, which means that's pretty high. There are Muslims today who read his works constantly and get a lot out of them. The mystical side, the side that talks about loving each other. He talks about economics, about how everyone is supposed to make as much money as they can, but they should never spend that money on luxuries. We should make as much money as we can because that's what Allah wants, but that money should be going to the poor, to the unfortunate. It should be going to the mosques and the community projects and all that kind of stuff. That's what money is for. It is not for going out and buying a slightly nicer car or a slightly bigger house or a slightly, nicer food. We eat the basics, we drink the basics, we live in the basics, and all the other money goes to the poor. That's his sort of monetary philosophy. So some say that he hated maths because he hated rationalism. He hated mathematics, but there's not much evidence of that really in his discussion and philosophy. Yes, he didn't really like rationality very much, but he didn't say it was pointless. He just thought there was more to it, or more to the universe than that. But some people say that Al-Ghazali, with his ideas about let's not worry about science and maths, and instead let's just focus on God, leads to a decline in the sciences in the Islamic world, which some people say even up to today. Islam in modern 21st century world is increasingly more about what the Quran says and less about what, I don't know, what we can work out in the latest physics experiments. They're not. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that Al-Ghazali destroyed science in Islam because, well, we see that science in Islam continues long after him. But it's an interesting thing. It's interesting to see that some Muslims love him and some Muslims hate him, and a very divisive figure. But some scientists actually are coming around to thinking that he might have more of a scientific point than even he thought. I don't know if I explained that, if I said that well, but the example being quantum physics. Quantum physics talks about how, nothing is fixed or formed until it's observed. Yeah. A particle can either be, and my quantum physics isn't very good, but I believe that particles can be, charged in different ways depending on when they're observed and how they're observed. Up to the point of observation, they are neither positive or negative. But when one observes them, they have to fix in one of those states, like Schrodinger's cat. You take a cat, you put it in a box. The cat could be dead. The cat could be alive. It's in a box. In a sense, it's neither. It's neither alive nor dead until you open up the box and look at the cat. And then boom, it has to fit in what's fixed into one of those states. It's either now alive or dead. Yeah, that's Schrodinger's cat in a very basic nutshell. And this is essentially what Al-Ghazali is talking about. Nothing is fixed, nothing is stuck. It's just like quantum mechanics, quantum physics, until it is observed by God. So our world is just this big mess of craziness, loads of just things spinning around with massive question marks over them. And it's not until Allah focuses on them and pokes them, one way or the other, that they become stable, if you like. So some quantum physicists, they read Al-Ghazali for ideas, to try and see, which means that he could actually be more of a scientist than he thought he was. They also read Buddhist texts as well, because it goes very well with Buddhism. But as soon as we start looking at quantum and questions about possibility or reality, then we get taken to religion pretty quick. And I think over the next few centuries, maybe, who knows, we'll start to see a much more close fusion of philosophy and science, just like it was in Al-Ghazali's time, I guess. Yeah, now, all right, so I'm just saying, if Allah didn't want you to murder people and get a new hot tub, you wouldn't get one. So Allah is, he makes things happen through his thoughts, but, there are ways that we can, that doesn't mean that we're just puppets. In Islam, in most forms of Islam, there is predeterminism. Allah knows at the moment of your birth, before you are born, he knows whether you're going to hell or heaven. He knows that because it is written. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you then just live your life without thought. In fact, quite the opposite. And that brings us to our last point today. Al-Ghazali, maybe if there's something we can take away from, whether you're Muslim or not, he thought one of the most important things to be was present, to be aware of everything around you, to take time and care over everything. You don't do anything on autopilot. You don't just wander around without thinking, without questioning, without experiencing things to the fullest. And this can be anything from eating a meal. You sit there and you eat the meal. Sometimes, I'm sure you guys have done this, you've got food there, you're doing something else. You're watching a thing or you're listening to something or having a chat, and you eat the food and you realize at the end of it, or maybe you don't even bother realizing at the end of it, but if you actually step back to think about it, you realize that you hadn't actually thought about what that food tasted like. You hadn't thought about the way you were eating it. You hadn't thought about where the ingredients came from. It's just some food and you ate it and you went on, you were thinking of other things. Al-Ghazali would say that's wrong. Yeah, everything you do, you should be totally present in that moment. So that meal that you eat it slowly, piece by piece. You fully consider, the tastes that you are tasting, the textures in your mouth. You think about where the food came from, who made the food? Was it me? Where did I get the ingredients from? Were they organic? Were they naturally sourced? Is this a vegan meal? Or whatever, is important to you. And that means that everything takes a bit of time. Yeah, I mean, he spent 2 years sweeping a floor, this guy. So that's being present. If you're out lying on the grass next to the sea, you should be aware of everything around you. The sounds, the sights, the smells, the creatures, the way the waves are moving, the way the wind is moving, everything. You should be completely present in that, because only then can you make sensible decisions. Only then are you actually experiencing life. Too many people, says Al-Ghazali, and this is back in medieval times. I dread to think what he'd think today. But he said back then that too many people just sort of go through life. They don't really notice what's happening around them. They just kind of do stuff because they've done it. His example would have been Islamic prayer. Salah. It's like, people get up, they hear the call to prayer, they do their prayers. Do they ever actually think about what they're doing? Do they think what it means? Allah Akbar, do they know, do they actually think about that? Do they think about how the Islamic prayer starts off talking to God, to Allah, as a sort of general great spirit? But by the time you get to the end of the prayer, the language in Arabic shifts and you actually start talking to Allah personally, as if he is there with you. And that's not a coincidence, says Al-Ghazali. You do that because through prayer, you are talking with Allah, as if he was in the room, or the Prophet, as if he was in the room. And it's that kind of awareness of yourself that is the key to everything, says Al-Ghazali. I don't know if I could. Oliver says I should do this every week. I'd love to do this every week, but of all the things that I teach, this thing takes by far the longest to plan. And the amount of reading that I have to do and the amount of things that I have to watch on YouTube, to do this one, I had to watch like 17 different philosophy professors and Islamic people from different parts of the world talking about it to even vaguely understand it. So yeah, that's why it's every other week, because it's hard work. But there you are. I mean, if you're going to do it, be present in it. And that's, it's also the most rewarding thing I do every other week, because it's something that I can truly, really drill down into and be present in, like Al-Ghazali says. There you go. Your computer made a sound and it sounded like you eat your mule. If you're going to eat your mule, be present in the moment. Really, really savor that mule, I guess. So I don't know. Al-Ghazali is an interesting one. Like all our religious philosophers that we talk about, there is that barrier, perhaps, between people who don't follow that religion and the philosophy. It's difficult to follow Immanuel Kant if you're not Christian. It's difficult to get behind Al-Ghazali if you're not Islamic, I suppose. But I don't think that should take away from him, his life lessons, perhaps, especially to be present, are very, very important. So it doesn't matter if you are one religion, another one, or I don't know, no religion at all. Just, we can take lessons from this. Maybe you don't believe that Allah causes everything, but hopefully we can agree that, taking time to actually experience the things around you and to be part and present in your own life is really, really vital. Might make us all happier, might help us get along a bit, maybe. That's good. Izzy's going to be present for the rest of the day. Yeah, go for it, Izzy. Thanks, Brea. No, it's not hard work, Brea, at all. It's a lot of fun. No, I'm not moaning about having to do lots of research. It's incredibly fun. I absolutely love doing it. But I'm just not going to be able to do it every week. That's all. All right. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed Al-Ghazali, and I hope, like all our philosophers, I've given you the bare bones, the amount of stuff I've read and listened to and stuff. We could go for hours, but hopefully that will give you, if you are interested in him or Islam in general or that time in Baghdad, you can go forward and do more research and enjoy that. All right. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, guys, when we've got a very different one, actually. I'm going to go down into the depths of the Fae, and we're going to be talking about fairies, which, yeah, that's going to be super fun. I'm looking forward to researching that one. Yeah. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye.